What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 2 of NFL Turf Talk right here on DSM Media's Turf Talk YouTube channel. Guys, first and foremost, if you are already subscribed, if you're watching in replay form, we greatly appreciate you guys. But do yourselves a favor, do us a favor. Make sure to subscribe to all three of the DSM Media YouTube channels. It's the best spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up here on the screen with your host when we are live starting this Thursday night, breaking down the Ravens and Chiefs matchup to kick off the 2024 NFL season, as well as giving our Super Bowl predictions, playoff predictions, and all that stuff. But subscribe. It is the best spot to be interactive with us. I'm one half of your host here, Dylan Davis. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. We broke down the AFC and NFC North divisions last week. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down the South divisions for you guys, as well as adding to our top 10 list when it comes to quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends, and see which of these players in these two respective divisions made it onto our top 10 list. Scotty, my man, happy Tuesday. Hope your Labor Day weekend went well, man, and everybody out there, hope your Labor Day weekend went well as well.
Yeah, man, went pretty good for me. I never am gonna take a long weekend for granted, so enjoyed that. But this is the week, man. NFL is back. I'm excited to get a bunch of content out here this week just to get us kicked off, and we continue here with the South Division. So should be some fun conversation mixed in here. I think you look at both of these. There should be maybe a new division champion, maybe not in the AFC South. We'll see, depending how you feel about that. But no, I think there's some interesting conversation, some interesting dialogue to follow along here with a bunch of these teams between these two divisions. So should be fun. There was a lot of turnover as well, a lot of additions to a few of these teams that we can discuss as well. But yeah, man, happy Tuesday we're here. I'm just counting down the days till Thursday. So 2 away until the season openers.
Yeah, I got my fantasy draft tonight, and then we got about 48 hours once that ends till kickoff, man, in Arrowhead. So cannot wait. Like you said, I'm just a little frustrated. I've been sick for 2 weeks now, dude. All these recordings, all these live shows we're doing, and I just cannot break this congestion, whatever it is, and sounding like a moron on the mic, man. But like you said, I mean, let's be honest, okay? We did the North divisions last week, and in the NFC, you have a lot of intrigue, right? You have Jordan Love, MVP conversation. The Packers, for a lot of people, could win that division. You have the Lions, who went to the NFC Championship game last year and just missed out on going to the Super Bowl. You have Caleb Williams and the Bears. Over in the AFC, probably, like we talked about, the best, most difficult division to break down. Ultra competitive, 1 through 4 over there. And then you get to these two, and it's like Bryce Young and the Panthers are sitting here. Will Levis and the Titans are sitting here. Derek Carr is here. Like, we don't really know what these divisions are going to bring. They could be, respectively, at least the NFC South might be the worst division in football this year. But with that said, there are some new storylines to get into. There's a lot of new additions. And I think the thing I find interesting in both of these divisions, in both conferences, Scotty, is how quickly, like I said, this is season 3 for Turf Talk, how quickly a window may have closed for, at one point, the division winners just a year or two ago when it comes to these divisions. And we'll get into that and what we're talking about. But I mean, man, you look at Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and maybe that window where they were easily viewed as the favorite in the AFC South a year ago, 2 years ago, now might be getting thinner, right? You look at the Saints with that defense, the Dome, Kamara, Olave, they go out and try to get their guy in Derek Carr. The rest of the division continues to struggle. And now all of a sudden, things aren't working out in Derek Carr land in New Orleans. And there's some other teams starting to make their way up and try to take you out in that division. It even started last year, right, with Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield making the playoffs and obviously beating our Eagles in the wild card round. So I think that's the first thing I'm looking at, man, is how quickly some of these previous favorites windows has closed. And I think that's what leaves these two divisions up in the air, where, like, yeah, I can sit here and tell you there's no chance DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud don't win this division. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, right? There's no chance a new Kirk Cousins added to the Falcons loses this division. Who
Right.
knows? So
Yeah.
I think that's where the intrigue starts for me when it comes to these two divisions.
Yeah, no, and I think we can start with the NFC side of things, man. You mentioned New Orleans, who has kind of just been hovering there. They've had like the better defense. They've had like a
Mhm.
defensive identity they could rely on the last few years. They've had Alvin Kamara, the star running back that can do a little bit of everything back there, especially in the receiving game. You have the Olave, right? The wide receiver one. He is a great quality wide. I think he's actually a little underrated at
Mhm.
this point in his career with the production that he's had, even, down there with Derek Carr, right? Like, who we didn't look at as having a great season last year. Olave had a great season nonetheless. So, amongst all of that, he's been able to produce. Michael Thomas kind of on the downhill spiral,
Yeah.
right? And then you look at their offense as a whole, the Taysom Hill stuff, like it just it's kind of old and played out. And
Yeah.
and I look at their defense, and I kind of look at their defense the same way. A lot of their household names that they've had there forever, the Cam Jordans, the Demario Davises, these guys are 35 years old, man. I'm looking at them and I'm like, man, they weren't that great last year anyways, right? Like Demario Davis was a little bit better than Jordan was, but going into this season, I expect them to be a little bit worse, a little bit older and a little bit slower. So you talk about a team that, maybe going into last season, they get Derek Carr in house, and you think, maybe this is the team that takes control of this division. I actually have them finishing third in this division this year. Now, obviously, you have Bryce Jordan over there, and excuse me, I might have just got his name all the
Bryce
way
Young.
messed
Yeah, yeah,
up.
yeah. I know who you
Bryce
mean.
Young, excuse me,
You went
over
Cam
there in
Jordan and then
Carolina.
Bryce. Yeah, 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 I get that.
Yeah, I got my names mixed
Yeah.
up there, but Bryce Young, nonetheless, down there in Carolina. I think that's the guy you can obviously point at. Least amount of experience, the least amount of talent around him. That team just doesn't look good at all there in Carolina. So by default, they slide to 4. But New Orleans is old; they're aging. I'm out on Derek Carr, man.
Mhm.
I think that's where I've come to place them third in this division. Is I'm completely out on Derek Carr ever being like even a good, like an
No.
average to good quarterback in this league. He's
Yeah.
not
He's
good.
done. No.
And he's we've seen it in different places now, right?
Yeah.
He looks like the same guy. So yeah, man, New Orleans, just to start the conversation there, I think, yeah, they've lost a step, and they've lost it, any type of advantage. They don't have any advantage at this
No.
point. I think they've lost a step by a mile here. To your point, man, Atlanta coming in hot with the additions they've made this offseason. And you look at New Orleans and you do ask yourself, and I guess you could say the same thing about Tampa Bay. Like, I don't really know who they added this offseason.
No.
New Orleans, Chase Young, Jamal Williams, the running back, right? Like, what does he have left in the tank if he's going to even be a difference maker? Yeah, I don't really see the vision with where New Orleans is going at all. If I'm being
New.
completely honest, and I'll throw this to you. Like, if you look at New Orleans and Carolina next to each other, which one is worse off going forward? Because like
Yeah.
at least Carolina knows that they suck, and they'll get like a top draft pick going forward. But like, what does New Orleans really have going for them? I mean, Chris Olave is good.
Yeah, that's it. That's a tough question, man, because I think the easy way to go with is say Carolina, right? Took Bryce Young number 1 overall 2 years ago.
Hope that he can be something.
Right.
Like,
Try to figure that out. Try to have some sort of direction, right? The fan base
yeah,
knows we're rebuilding for however
yeah,
long that rebuild goes on for. No one knows. But
yeah,
the issue though, like so the easy answer would have been Carolina for me.
yeah,
But it's almost like New Orleans lucked out for this question because if it was any other bad team with some
yeah.
sort of direction, I would say New Orleans is worse off. Carolina is just in disarray,
You
man.
don't
Like
believe in Bryce Young at all.
I don't believe in Bryce
What
Young.
you're
I mean,
saying,
and
yeah,
then
and that's fair.
look what they gave up to go get Bryce Young,
Yeah,
and then it turned into Caleb Williams the next year for Chicago. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
so,
yeah,
you they took a swing for the fences and looking like it's going to miss. Miles Sanders from had a Pro Bowl season with us 2 years ago. They go out and give him a 4-year deal. He lost his job in like week 3 to Chuba Hubbard last year.
Yeah.
He's not listed as the starting running back right now. I mean, Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen has to be the most like mediocre wide receiver duo in the league. It's not the worst. Like that, they can be solid, but it's tough for me to take this Panthers team seriously, even though, because the thing with Carolina is you think they have a direction, you think they have a vision. Although I don't believe that that's going to play out the right way. So I think New Orleans, for that question, lucked out, because if it was any other team in the National Football League that was in rebuild mode, I would say they're better off than the Saints right now because they have the vision. I don't know that Carolina does. The thing with New Orleans, man, the reason I brought them up kind of earlier to you, and I like that you started with them, is because they took a swing for the fences and completely whiffed. And what I mean by that is Derek Carr. So Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay, wins a Super Bowl, goes to the NFC Championship game, and retires, right? And from that, when Tom Brady retires, it left a little window of opportunity. And the New Orleans Saints go out and they bring in Derek Carr, and you look at Tampa, they have no direction at quarterback, right? They're not going to win right now. Carolina obviously was not competing at the moment. And the Falcons definitely, like New Orleans with that Derek Carr move, slid to number 1 in a lot of people's eyes in the NFC South division. And Scotty, bro, it just has not worked out with, like you said it, like when they made the move, there were already people that hated Derek Carr. He turned the ball over a lot in Oakland, right? I get that. I did not think Derek Carr was this. I thought Derek Carr was a middle of the packish type of quarterback with maybe a slightly higher ceiling because he can sling the ball down the field, right? Remember him and Amari Cooper when Amari Cooper was drafted to the Raiders? He stinks. He flat out stinks, man. I don't know how long he holds on to this job for. He turns the ball over nonstop. I mean, I remember last year, we're sitting here putting the Panthers in the doghouse. I mean, I remember rookie year Bryce Young competing against Derek Carr and the Saints last year. So that's what I'm talking about with these divisions, man. These are two what I perceive to be very bad teams. Okay, that's trying to put it as nicely as I possibly can when it comes to those two.
New Orleans, they have Spencer Rattler over there, and that's interesting. Obviously, he was a guy that kind of fell a little bit in college, didn't really live up to the hype, but just a young guy. If things start to go downhill in this season, he's maybe a guy that they just throw out there to see what they have. Where did Jameis Winston go? He was there last year. Did he?
Why am I drawing a blank on this dude? I've seen him all over. I've seen him all over preseason clips. What?
Did he go back to Tampa Bay?
I'm gonna check for you right now. I've seen him all over.
He didn't do that.
And I'm gonna find it. Hold on. This is actually gonna piss me off.
I feel like I've been seeing him everywhere too, because I was gonna say him, and then I checked the roster. He's not on the roster anymore. Cleveland.
Cleveland.
You're right. You're right. Yep. So not going to be Jameis this year. That's who came in for him last year at a certain point. I think he may have went down for a game or two. But nonetheless, Spencer Rattler's that young guy there. I was just looking it up because I know you talked about Carolina's receiving core, and funny enough, man, this slipped under my radar, but Adam Thielen had over 1,000 yards receiving last year, which is crazy. They didn't have anybody else, to be fair. I think DJ Chark was the next guy up with 500 receiving yards, but interesting. I didn't know that Adam Thielen was still producing at that level last year, nonetheless. But
he has no choice.
I do agree with you regarding this division, man. How do you feel about Tampa Bay, though, right? Like, because we can obviously gravitate towards Atlanta. We can go up the list here, I guess you could call it. But Atlanta's the most exciting team. What do you think about Tampa Bay, who didn't really add anything, but they basically staple in, like, Baker Mayfield's our quarterback going forward. They did draft, I think, Kyle Trask, right? He's the future maybe there, but they decided to give Baker a decent contract this offseason and lock him in a little. How do you feel about Tampa Bay?
So I do agree. Let's work our way up. I think we're in agreement. Carolina's 4, Saints are 3, and I do agree. I would have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sliding in the number 2 spot in the NFC South.
Likewise.
It was lightning in a bottle for me last year when it comes to Tampa Bay, and that is like overselling a playoff win. Like I am, like that's what like them hosting winning that division and hosting a wild card round game and beating the Eagles in round one. Don't get me wrong, Baker Mayfield deserves the money. Baker Mayfield had a hell of a year. Baker Mayfield kind of rejuvenated his career. Definitely rejuvenated his career in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Good luck repeating it. That's where I'm at right now. Like, good luck. Baker Mayfield was on his way out of the league. Do you remember like 2 years ago when he signed with the Rams in the middle of the year and then started for them on Thursday Night Football or whatever after like 2 weeks of preparation and then like got cut? Baker Mayfield had 1 foot out the door of the National Football League. Gets, an opportunity in Tampa, takes advantage of it, makes the most of it, has a very, very good year, wins a playoff game. Hats off to you. It's not happening again this year. It's not. I don't believe that Tampa Bay is going to win any more than 9 games this year, and that's not going to be good enough to win their division with the upgrades to the team we're going to get to next. So my thoughts on Tampa, I think they're going to be as close to average as you could possibly. If you could pick out the most average teams in the National Football League this year, Tampa Bay is going to be right in the thick of that. I think they are 8-9, 9-8, missing the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you here. I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about him as well, man. Just average. Baker Mayfield, I think, like you said, he had a great year, maybe his best season ever in the NFL last year for Tampa Bay. But with that being said, what did that get for them, right? Like, what did that get them at the end of the day?
And are you expecting anything close to that again? Like,
exactly, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I don't know if we're going to see that ratio from him again. If it does, then maybe we need to start talking about Baker as a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the NFL again. Like maybe that's where we'll be headed, but I will have to see that to believe that, to your point, man. And I think the other side of that conversation is the rushing game. Last year, they tried it with Rachaad White, had the downtick, no more Leonard Fournette back there in the backfield splitting carries with him. It was all Rachaad White. Wasn't great. 3.6 yards per carry. Didn't eclipse 1,000 yards.
They did nothing to upgrade it.
Exactly what I'm getting at here. They didn't add anything to the backfield to make it better either. They still got Godwin. They still got Mike Evans, but there's just only so much that those two guys can do for your offense.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they have to stay healthy all season. So, yeah, I'm not huge on Tampa Bay this year. I think their defense is always solid. Todd Bowles, the head coach, he's going to give them an identity on defense. But when I look at the rest of the division, man, I'll go ahead and throw this out to you. I'll probably take Carolina's defense over Tampa Bay's when it comes from a playmaking standpoint of their defense. So if I do go that route, then I'm talking about them as the second or third best defense in this division. Now we get to Atlanta, man. I think they've eclipsed everyone when it comes to both sides of the ball. I think they have the best offense and the best defense in this division. That's on paper. We just need to see it all fit in front of our eyes. Which I think everybody expects him to. My question to throw to you about Atlanta, just to get you started on them. If you're high on them, I see a lot of people high on them. I just saw our buddy Mark Henry, 12-5. They're going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. Is it because of their talent, or is it because of their schedule, their division, the things that they face during their season? Like, how high are you actually on their team versus where they are actually, like, their structure as far as where they're placed in the division, the schedule that they'll play this year, depending who they'll play opponent wise? I think they're going to get a second or third place schedule in that division to play against this year.
I just pulled it up because that's the point I'd have to look at for them to produce 11 to 12 wins. Is their schedule favorable to them where they can pull that out? Obviously, when you play the Panthers twice, right? They play the Cowboys and the Eagles, so that's tough. But then you play the Commanders and the Giants at the same time.
They play the Chiefs.
So I'll go through it, right? But that's exactly. So, Scotty, they start off the year against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which it's a winnable game at home. but that's a difficult game
Very
to start the
difficult.
year
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
defense. Then you travel to the Link on Monday night to play the Eagles. Then you go back home for Sunday Night Football to take on the the defending Super Bowl champions and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Then you have 4 out of your next 5 are division opponents with a Seattle game mixed in, their potential playoff team. Then you play the Cowboys. You play the Chargers. You play a Raiders team, which, yeah, I think they're going to be favored there. But the Raiders, when we talk about the AFC West, I don't think the Raiders are going to be as bad as everyone thinks they are. I don't think they're going to
And
be
it's in Las Vegas.
So I don't see this as an ultra favorable
12-win team
for them. It's interesting you bring up, Mark Henry's thoughts and some other people's thoughts, because what I was going to lead off with was Atlanta's in such a weird spot for me, because do I think they win their division? Yes. I think they are easily the best team in the NFC South.
Yeah.
Am I excited to maybe see Kyle Pitts and Drake London with an actual quarterback, Bijan Robinson, and an actual offense? This defense, brother, is loaded. I mean, you go out and you add a Matthew Judon to, what they have built in the secondary already with Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell. They lock him up. You go out, you get Justin Simmons. You add Matthew Judon to a Grady Jarrett up front. Like, they are going to be a very tough, stingy, physical defense. Add in a what could be a high-flying offense. Yes, the Falcons win this division. However, what the fuck do people think Kirk Cousins is all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Does Kirk Cousins make them the favorite to win the division? 1,000%.
Yeah.
Does Kirk Cousins put them anywhere near Super Bowl or NFC Championship game? Absolutely the fuck he not. Dude, what are we doing? Like, I brought this up to you a couple weeks ago when Dan Orlovsky gave out his top quarterbacks in the NFC and talked about the Falcons as well. He had Kirk Cousins. What did I say he had him at? The second or third best quarterback in the NFL. What are we doing here, dude?
You didn't have Dak or Hurts in the top 5. So
what are we doing here, man? Kirk Cousins can't perform in prime time, let alone the playoffs. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does he have a playoff win? Because I don't believe so. And in fact, I think he only went to the playoffs 1 or 2 times with the Vikings. And if I'm correct, he lost to Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Could be wrong there. You'd have to fact check me. I believe I was in a parking lot tailgating an Eagles playoff game that day. And outside of that, I'm not really sure what he's... So all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins goes from Mr. Unreliable at this point of his career, coming off that major injury last year, heading into a new offense, a new system, with a team, an organization that drafted a quarterback inside the top 11 or 12 of this year's drafts.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people think they're the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to go back and I just wanted to see his latest playoff trip, and it was against the New York Giants, if you remember, man, because we ended up playing the Giants in the second round when we thought we would play the Minnesota Vikings in the postseason. They lost to Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants. Now, mind you, Kirk Cousins didn't do anything necessarily
but that doesn't matter
per se in this game. It wasn't his fault, but it was an L, right? And so you think about Justin Jefferson, right, that season and what he was doing. I believe this had to be maybe Dalvin Cook. Was this his last season? Or maybe it was his first season gone from the Vikings. But nonetheless, it is interesting when you think about it. I get from the standpoint of Pitts, London, Bijan, it's going to be fun, more fun than what it's been. It's going to be better than what it's been.
Rather easily, probably.
But like, what are we comparing? And then I would even go this far. Like, we're talking about him having to stay healthy as well, coming off of a major knee injury last season with the Vikings. So, while I'm high on Atlanta, I'm having a hard time deciphering whether I'm high on them because of like their division, the opponents in their division that they're going to get to play twice a season, or is it actually how talented they are, right? And that's the confusing part for me, because let's look at it this way. Like, if Kirk Cousins was starting the year on the Vikings this year, where would we have the Vikings? Would they all of a sudden become this team that is in the playoff picture, or competing for a championship, like even competing for their division? Like, is Kirk Cousins that much of a difference maker with Justin Jefferson? I don't know. Like, I get it. The weapons may be better in Atlanta. They have a better defense for
I don't know.
sure.
What about when he had Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, exactly. And then Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, right? After that, like, so on and so forth. It's interesting to think about the Kirk Cousins hype train that has kind of happened this year, but I can't like go against it, if that makes sense. Like, I want to go against the Atlanta and Kirk Cousins hype train, because I am not sold on Kirk Cousins by any means.
No.
But in this division, I just simply can't. They're going to win their division.
For my money, all right, and I do think Dak's a better quarterback than Kirk for my money. But Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott are built from the same cloth, okay? And what I mean, like, you take Kirk Cousins, and to your point, yeah, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, but I don't think it's pretty fun. Justin Jefferson tops anything that Atlanta
he makes everything sound great.
And Atlanta's defense factored in. Like,
yeah,
Kirk Cousins is going to benefit from playing in Atlanta, and Atlanta is going to benefit from having him. Kirk Cousins, let's just go down the list. Previous to last year's injury, over 4,500 yards, 29 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. The year before that, 4,200 yards, 33-7, 42-65 with 35 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. 3,600 yards, 26-6, 4,300 yards, 30-10, 4,000 yards, 27-13. Kirk Cousins can put up numbers. But what happens 1,000% of the time when the lights get their brightest?
Yeah.
His team does not win football games. Now, to your point, whether that has to do with him or not, whether he's, maybe he throws for 2 touchdowns and doesn't turn the ball over and has a fine game in that game. It doesn't matter when the results are all the same. Scotty, Kirk Cousins has been a quarterback in this league for 12 years. He has technically 5 playoff games. He only threw the ball 10 times in the first one when he was younger in Washington. So he's technically really played in 4. He started in 4 playoff games in 12 years. He's 1-3 in those 4 playoff games, Scotty. And now all of a sudden, he's going to take the Atlanta Falcons to a Super Bowl. What is going on in people's minds? And I mean that as nicely as I can.
Yeah. When you pose it directly like that, what the hell? And there is a side of things where these pieces do have to fit. Like, Kirk Cousins does have to perform well with those players for it to work out. But then on the defensive end, they added a bunch of talent. Don't get me wrong, right? You talk about the Justin Simmons, you talk about Matthew Judon to that defense, right? These are 2 high-profile caliber players. And they already had guys like Jesse Bates, who had 6 interceptions last year. They have studs on the defensive end. You do have to make it fit. You have to hope that the coaching can work out. There is a lot of turnover going on there, right? A lot of experience being added, but a lot of turnover nonetheless. Let me ask you this, just to kind of wrap up that division, though, and thinking about it here. What percentage chance would you give Tampa Bay of winning the division? Like, what are the chances that Atlanta maybe doesn't live up to the hype? Like, if Atlanta is only able to gather maybe 10 wins, is there a chance Tampa Bay could get to that level, like a 10-win team? I guess I would have to look at Tampa Bay's game by game schedule. They're going to get the number 1 ranked opponents, right? Like, because they won the division last year.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
they're going to get the Lions.
Tampa Bay schedule's difficult, man.
Eagles,
they have at Detroit,
Ravens,
Eagles, Ravens, at Kansas City,
Niners,
San Fran, at Los Angeles, at Dallas. So
yeah,
when I look at that, no, I don't see double-digit wins for them. In fact, I don't even see 9-8 for that Tampa Bay team.
So does New Orleans get second in the division?
I don't think it's really possible. But again, like anything's possible when it comes to injuries. And if I'm going to sit here, because but again, that's why Kirk Cousins makes this team so dynamic and has me on a seesaw, because I do think they run away with the division in the regular season. I just don't think it really goes any further than that. Maybe they win a playoff game, but they're not going to be hosting the NFC Championship game or running through anybody. So if I had to give a percentage on Tampa Bay, 10%. Maybe that's being generous on like 90-10, 85-15, something like that. And if Atlanta's healthy, I just don't really think it's possible. So we'll have to see, man. We'll have to see. But apparently the Atlanta Falcons are Super Bowl contenders in a lot of people's eyes. News to me. But anyway, let's transition on over to the AFC South. When you're looking at the Jags, the Titans, the Texans, and the Colts, I'd have to like go through and actually look it up. This has to be the division of the youngest quarterbacks in the league, right? When you're talking about a second year in Anthony Richardson, a second year in CJ Stroud, what is it? A second year now in Will Levis, and then Trevor Lawrence for a handful of years.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of young talent when it comes to the quarterback position in the AFC South. And let's get into it, man. Like I said, when it comes to windows, the Jacksonville Jaguars were heading into last year and the year before that as the clear favorites. And to be honest, man, I didn't really think there was an end in sight when it came to the other teams rebuilding as quickly as they might be able to, and Jacksonville running away with this division. And in the snap of a finger, in the blink of an eye, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be fighting for like anywhere from 1 to 3. I'm not saying they will not win the division. I'm not saying they can't win the division. But I also believe they could be the third best team in the division.
Yeah.
And that's what's so intriguing to me here, man. Let's start with who I would put in the basement of this division, and that is the Tennessee Titans. But I do want to get your thoughts on them real quick, because they did go out and have a pretty busy offseason, especially when you look at the skill positions on this roster. I mean, you go out, you get a Tony Pollard from Dallas, you add Calvin Ridley to DeAndre Hopkins, and then they go and steal away the slot receiver in Cincy and bring in Tyler Boyd. All of a sudden, a young Will Levis is surrounded by a pretty decent roster offensively. Now, what that offensive line looks like, we're going to have to see. Obviously, head coach turnover. But I have them finishing 4th just because of the unknown. Is it crazy to think that Tennessee could be okay? Like, Tennessee's not going to win the division, but could they be okay? Or is that defense just not good enough?
Man, it's funny, man, because I'm looking at the defense, and maybe they've got me fooled with names, but I mean, it appears that they're stacked on defense too. They added a lot of talent on defense as well. Ernest Jones, the linebacker from LA, young. L'Jarius Sneed from the Chiefs, number 1 corner.
I forgot they brought him.
Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, which I get it. Jamal Adams washed. Quandre Diggs better than Jamal Adams for sure. He's a quality ad. And then you look at some of the guys that they had. The Jeffrey Simmons. Who else was here last year? Harold Landry III led the way with sacks last year, along with Autry, which they did lose Autry. He was a double-digit sack guy last year for them, but nonetheless, you look at every level of their defense, they have playmakers at each level, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. So the defense doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be this like glaring weakness in my eyes, man, honestly. So when I look at what the Titans can do this year, a lot of it in my eyes is on Will Levis. When I think about it, like the offensive line obviously is going to have to protect him, make things comfortable for him. But Will Levis, can he get guys involved? Are they going to be able to run the football without Derrick Henry back there? These are all questions that will have to be answered. But for me, I guess they would all be on the offensive end of things. But they do have weapons there this year as well. I think maybe that just kind of speaks to where the division is at. I guess what you would say when you look at the rest of the division, they have quarterbacks that you maybe believe in a little bit more than what you believe in Will Levis. I guess the other question mark would be over in Indy, right? Or do you think Richardson is definitively better than Will Levis? We didn't see that much of Richardson last year, but he did look like a stud when he played. The Titans are interesting, which makes this division interesting as a whole for me because I do have them at 4th as well. With all of that being said, how I kind of talked about them semi-highly here, they do come in 4th in this division for me. So I don't know, where are you at with the Titans? Like you don't think they have a chance at winning the division, and I think I would agree with you, just because the other teams, like any of the other 3 teams, can win the division.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be the Titans, in my opinion.
Do you want me to take it a step further?
You know what I mean?
You want me to take a step further for you? I haven't looked at the other 3 teams' schedules. I just clicked on Tennessee's. Let me share this one with you.
Nasty.
At Chicago, Jets, Packers, at Miami, Colts, at Buffalo, at Detroit, New England, at Chargers, Minnesota, at Houston, at Washington, Jacksonville, Bengals, at Colts, at Jaguars, at home versus Houston to end the season.
Yeah.
I mean, brother, I went from
that's brutal.
Agreeing with you, man, if Will Levis could be, could take a step, this actually could be a pretty fun team to watch. Now I'm sitting here I'm trying to find 5 wins. I mean, New England at home, Minnesota at home.
Yeah, they have that little stretch there in the middle of the season where they could maybe get 3 in a row, maybe.
I mean,
but
at this point, I'm not seeing anything over 6 wins, probably maximum. That's just on paper. Now, obviously, things could change. They could come out and
Will Levis, if Will Levis playing competent football, then it just looks different. You know what I mean? But it's a big question mark. We don't know if he's going to be playing some good football.
How is that fixed?
They don't have an identity. I think that's a big part of their problem as well.
Bro, shouldn't they be playing a 4th place schedule?
They should be, but I guess the Jets, for example, the Jets would maybe be the 4th place schedule, but they're probably the best team in their division on paper right now.
I mean, that's just rough, bro. That's really, really rough.
The Chiefs are they playing the Chiefs? No. They're not playing the Chiefs. Okay, they're playing the Bears, Jets.
I mean, to be fair, it just looks all around like this division is going to have a tough go of it. I clicked on the Colts. They have Houston at Green Bay, Chicago, Pittsburgh, at Jacksonville, at Titans, Dolphins at Houston. They play Buffalo. They play at the Jets. They play the Lions as well. So, yeah, it looks like they're just playing. Those are the 2 divisions they've got. They got the NFC North, and they got the I guess part of the AFC East. So, yeah, it's just kind of unlucky for that division this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Let's look at the Jags, man. Look at the team that you mentioned as the team that's kind of been ahead there for the last few years. And the reason I wanted to bring them up is because I feel like my confidence, it's not a feeling, it's a fact. My confidence is wavering with Trevor Lawrence and what he is in the NFL. If he is actually a good quarterback in the NFL, there's times where he looks like a great quarterback. There's times where he does things that no other quarterback, maybe only a select few of quarterbacks can do. But it's the inconsistency, I should say, that comes from him. Now, last year wasn't a total train wreck. I think he had 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 4,000 passing yards. So he can put up some numbers, but it's just in the finishing product. Like when you get at the end of games, what is Trevor Lawrence? Can he win you a ball game? I just don't know how I feel about that with him right now, but they add Gabe Davis. They add a few pieces on defense, Eric Armstead, Gibson Jr. from San Fran. So they try to toughen up a little bit on that end. But you lose Calvin Ridley, right? Your number 1 wide receiver from last year. Gabe Davis is the replacement. How does that work out with Christian Kirk and the rest of that crew there? What are your thoughts on the Jags this year, my man?
I mean, just a little bit of what you talked about. Are they better offensively at this point of the year than they were last year? You replace a Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis. That does not make you better for my money. I think Calvin Ridley, from a talent perspective, greatly outshines Gabe Davis. The defensive side of the ball. I mean, I'm looking at the back end of this secondary, dude. Ronald Darby has to start for you.
Yeah.
Andre Cisco, Tyson. I don't know what they are defensively. I think
Josh Allen's really good, like the pass rusher, right? Josh Hines Allen, I think his name is now.
Well, that's funny you bring that up because I was looking for him. I'm like, did he sign elsewhere? And then I just see now that it's Josh Hines Allen on there. So we'll see, man. Here's the issue. As I said, with the rest of how this division just got, slapped in the face with a tough schedule, I'm looking at Jacksonville's schedule, and I'm having a hard time finding a game where they might be favored through the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, you are at Miami, the Browns come to town, at Buffalo on Monday night, at Houston. You get the Colts. I think they'll, depending. It all depends on the first 4 weeks go. If they're 1-3 or God forbid 0-4, they might not be favored versus the Colts at that point of the year.
Yeah.
Then Chicago looks to be in London.
In London.
It looks to be somewhere 9:30 a.m. Yeah, so it's somewhere Germany, London. I'm not sure. That's tough. Then you finally get New England. First of all, what did they do?
Back games in London. Yeah.
Yeah. What did that? Jesus. Yes. Then you come home, Packers at Eagles. You get at Lions shortly after that. Dude, that is a tough break for the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's a world where they can come in fourth this year, Scotty. And I truly believe that. There's a world.
Yeah. I do agree with you. Like we said, like if Will Levis can play competent football, good football. I do think the Jags have the worst defense in the division. Do I think it's like this widespread margin? No, I think all of these defenses look pretty solid. I just think, to your point on the back end, that they're the one that's lacking the most talent on the back end of their defense in the secondary, which never helps you, especially against a team like Houston, who I think is ultimately going to win this division.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let me throw this to you, right? Because I think a lot of the conversation that I've seen on social media, at least, is between with the Colts and the Texans. Okay, last year C.J. Stroud had a hell of a rookie year. D'Amico Ryan's hell of a rookie year, and they still just squeaked out a division title over the Indianapolis Colts, who had Gardner Minshew playing for them. Anthony Richardson comes back. Is this division closer than it seems because of that argument? Well, if the Colts are getting Richardson, or do the Texans expand even wider because of what they did this offseason, man? I mean, outside, from being a biased Eagles fan and all that they did this offseason in the draft, adding Saquon Barkley, trading for Jahan, everything that Howie Roseman did. I mean, the Houston Texans absolutely crushed the offseason along with the Eagles and probably the Falcons, right, at this point. I mean, you go out and you added Joe Mixon to this backfield to go along with C.J. Stroud. All of a sudden, you trade for Stephon Diggs to go along with Tank Dell and Nico Collins and company, and for some reason, people don't seem to think Stephon Diggs is even like a top 15 wide receiver anymore because of a down year last year in Buffalo. I mean, Stephon Diggs is still top 10 capable in the National Football League. And you pair a young phenom with C.J. Stroud, you give him on top of the young receivers you have in Collins, Dell, Mechie, you have Robert Woods, you extended Dalton Schultz, you extended Laramie. Like, dude, they are loaded on offense. You go out, you bring in a Daniil Hunter to go on the line with Will Anderson and Mario Edwards. I mean, I love everything about this Houston Texans team. So my question to you is, do you agree with me that the Texans ultimately kind of run away with this division? Or is there an argument to be made where, well, hey, the Colts were right here last year and they're getting Anthony Richardson, their franchise quarterback, back?
It's tough, man. The Texans do have a ton of talent. You mentioned Diggs, Mixon on the offensive end. They added Autry on the defensive end. Hunter Donnell from the Vikings. They added Jeff Okuda. Obviously hasn't panned out, but has potential still there at this point. But I do think the Colts. There's just always something about the Colts that leaves them like right there. If Anthony Richardson can be a stud quarterback, like and we know what quarterbacks that can run and throw can do in the NFL. The type of threat that they present. 4 games last year he played as a starting quarterback for the Colts. He was 2-2 in those games. Got a win against the Titans. Got a win against the Texans. Lost against the Rams and lost against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the interesting thing with these games, the 2 games where he was the least effective passing were the 2 games that they actually won. So in his 2 wins, 9 for 12 from the field against Tennessee, 98 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And then against the Texans in the win, 6 for 10, 56 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But ultimately had his impact in the rushing game. So he had 2 rushing touchdowns that game. So it's still kind of hard to read what he's going to bring to the table to this team. It seems like he has a little bit of that intangibility to his game that we've seen in guys like Jalen Hurts, where the stats don't necessarily show everything great that he's doing on the field there. All that being said, Jonathan Taylor, can he stay healthy? Michael Pittman Jr., is he top 12, top 15 wide receiver in the NFL? Can he help them out there? These are all question marks. But that being said, these were all question marks that were there last year, except without Anthony Richardson, and they still were able to compete for the division. So while I have the Texans winning the division, and I am confident in that pick, I do think there's 35%, 40% chance the Colts could come away and win this division. I like the Colts over the Jags. Let me put it that way. Okay. I like the Colts over the Jags wholeheartedly. I think their defense, their front 7 is legit there in Indy. It's really about health. Can Richardson, can Taylor stay healthy? If they can, that's a mean 2-headed monster back there when you talk about rushing the football, similar to that of like a Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on a lesser scale. But it's interesting to think about. But I do feel you on the Texans. They are covered across the board. I guess it's like, man, it's the same thing. It's like it's just hard to believe these teams rise this fast. But if it was the Eagles, I would be looking at them as a lock for sure. So to take the bias or maybe the jealousy out of it a little bit with CJ Stroud. I think the Texans are going to win this division, man. But I do like the Colts, maybe to make it as a wild card team, something like that.
So here's an interesting tweet. Second shout out for our man Mark Henry Jr. As you were going through there, I was just scrolling, and interestingly enough, he has a tweet out an hour ago or so about the Colts from last year. So last year, between week 7 and 17, the Colts went 6-4. So that's kind of around that stretch. They competed and it came down to the wire between them and Houston that I'm talking about here. Here's the quarterbacks they played in that stretch. PJ Walker, Derek Carr, Bryce Young, Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, Jake Browning, Mitch Trubisky, Taylor Heineke, and Aiden O'Connell. And he basically goes on to say there are people, that are having the conversation that we're having right now. But he believes it's totally fake. Like last year's ending was totally fake when it comes to the Colts. Now, again, that's Gardner Minshew. It's not Anthony Richardson. They're going to be better in that from that standpoint as well. But that only helps my thought process a little bit further as well, because it's like not only did the Texans add, and not just add stars, right? Like we're sitting here giving props to the Titans for adding a Calvin Ridley and a Tony Pollard and a Tyler Boyd. Meanwhile, the best team in the division already added a Stephon Diggs and a Joe Mixon and a Daniil Hunter. Like they added star power to an already pretty loaded roster. So I do think they just are, without a doubt, the best team in this division. I think there's two things that can trip up something going wonky within this division. A, obviously, it's always going to be health when it comes to every team across the National Football League.
Yeah.
But B, it is almost, who can balance out their injuries and win a couple games they're not supposed to when it comes to these tough schedules that these four teams have, man. Like, again, you look at the Houston Texans. I mean, they play at Indy to start. They get Caleb Williams on Sunday Night Football. Then it's Minnesota, whatever. Jaguars, Bills. You get at Green Bay, Colts again, at Jets, Detroit, at Dallas. At the end of the year, dude, you get at Jacksonville, Miami, at Kansas City, Ravens. I mean, that's difficult, man. So for me, anywhere close, like even a 2-game stretch where, maybe the Texans lose in Arrowhead and at the Ravens and the Colts win a game, and now it's a 1-game difference heading into week 17 or week 18 at this point, excuse me. That can be all the difference in the world. I just think they're too talented where they're going to win basically all the games they should, right? Like they're going to torch Minnesota. They're going to torch New England. They're going to beat up. I think they're probably going to beat up on the Titans, even though they're division rivals. So it's going to be interesting, man. I do think it actually is a pretty enticing division. But if I had to give you an order, I would go Texans 1. I think it's a crapshoot from that point on, Scotty. I really do. Like, if I'm going to be honest, obviously, you need your head coach and your quarterback to be locked in, and you have some turnover in Tennessee, and we obviously are all predicting Anthony Richardson to be ahead of Will Levis. But if you go through the rest of the roster, is the Indianapolis Colts roster better than the Titans, or are the Titans better? I mean, I don't know.
I think for what it is for me is an identity with Anthony Richardson and what I imagine the identity will be with him, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like if you can have the rushing attack as the head of your identity, then that's one step they have ahead of the Tennessee Titans, who just don't have an identity. And then I guess when I think of the Colts ahead of the Jags, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little hard on Trevor Lawrence, man. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why I have the Jags below the Colts for me. Because when I look at the Colts, I like, once again, the identity, the rushing attack led by Anthony Richardson, a two-way quarterback, a guy that can do a little bit of everything. It just seems a little more intriguing to me. But to be fair, when you look at who he's throwing to, I mean, Michael Pittman Jr., and then who else? And that is a question mark, to say the very least there. But Jonathan Taylor, he's a big question mark too, right? Like, I don't know if it's a question mark as in like his talent level. Like, we know what he can do, but is he going to get to the top end of that? Like, that's the question, right? Can he stay healthy for a whole season and be productive? And
is Jonathan Taylor very Josh Jacobs-ish? Is it a guy rushing champ from 2-3 years ago? We know what the upside and ceiling can be. Health issues for both are coming off of, and obviously Josh Jacobs' year last year. Jonathan Taylor has struggled in a little bit and staying healthy. It's interesting, man, to see. But
Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook from a few years ago, Nick Chubb. Who knows? I mean, when he comes back from the injury. These are guys that we're asking ourselves, like, where do these guys really fit? Especially now on new teams with some of these guys, where do they truly fit within the rest of the running back groups? That's why I was texting you ahead of this show, and we were talking about our running back rankings, and I had to switch some shit around because I don't know. There's
difficult.
Part of me that's like stuck in what I envision of these players and what I think of, what it comes with the name value, and then you go and you look at production and it's like, well, the production's just not there for 2 years. Right. You could potentially say Jonathan Taylor's not even a top 10 running back. So there are some question marks there, to say the least.
For sure, man.
On the higher end, I guess, for the Colts. But I think the Texans take this division, man. I guess the Jags, like, what happens with the Jags? Trevor Lawrence, are they able to take a step forward? Do they stay in the same spot, which probably gets them second in the division if they just stay at the same spot as last year?
The
It's
thing, real
interesting.
quick, the thing with
These
the Jags,
head-to-head matchups are going to be very
oh,
key in this division.
very
It's going
critical
to
when it comes
decide
to
the
this
division
division.
most
The
likely.
thing when it comes to the Jags, man, is I'm watching everyone else basically get better, and
Yeah,
I'm watching you guys stay the same.
yeah.
Or maybe
Which in
even get
return
a
is getting
fraction
worse.
worse, right?
Yeah,
Like, again,
yeah.
Gabe Davis is not an upgrade over Calvin Ridley.
No,
You
no.
downgraded the wide receiver position for my money.
Yeah,
Christian Kirk, like at least from a name perspective, you could argue Calvin Ridley's wide receiver 1. Now you have a guy in Christian Kirk who's wide receiver 2. Now all of a
yeah,
sudden Christian Kirk, who you overpaid a couple years ago already, is back to being wide receiver 1. And that's a difficult thing. Gabe Davis already struggled at times with being a wide receiver 2, and he had Stephon Diggs taking up a lot of attention on the other side. How is
yeah.
Gabe Davis going to produce as a wide receiver 2, which is Christian Kirk on the other side of him, right? So we're gonna have to see what the Jags
With
can
a
do, man.
quarterback that's not as good as Josh Allen as
Right,
well, right?
right.
Like
And
Trevor
Trevor Lawrence,
Lawrence.
man, Trevor Lawrence a few short years ago, coming out of Clemson, was the most sought after, the most highly talked about quarterback prospect, maybe since Peyton fucking Manning. Okay,
Yeah,
like that's how long it had been
yeah,
for a guy to clearly he just won football games from high school to throughout college, and then he gets here, #1 overall pick, and you can see the arm talent, you can see the things you just can't teach a guy to do with a football in his hands.
yeah.
But he hasn't accomplished anything.
Just looks like a
And
game manager,
they're
man. That's what he
yeah,
looks
and
like.
they're getting passed by when it comes to the Texans. It's gonna be TBD if they get passed by the Colts. The Titans are doing more in an offseason than you have done. So it's gonna be interesting, man. I think that's a good segue for us to now get into our positional rankings.
Yeah.
As we close in on an hour here. We always think, man, this one 30, 40 minutes. Never gonna happen, my friend. Let me just pause this here. A little bit of a better graphic from week 1, from episode 1, excuse me. Trying to put together our top 10 list for you guys, and every week or every show, excuse me, that we do, we are going to add and fill in from the players within those divisions. So from last week's NFC and AFC North, obviously Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson come in on our list, and Scotty has Jordan Love entering at number 10, a lot of people's MVP candidate. One quarterback being added this week, and that is second year CJ Stroud. Scotty has him at 7. I have him at 8, right around the same.
Yeah.
I could bump him. I could make the argument that CJ Stroud's top 6 in the league right now. Just want to see a little bit more, see a little bit what he does with a Stephon Diggs now on his roster with a Joe Mixon next to him.
Yeah.
But he's an absolute stud, dude. Like he came in, took the league by storm, and gets the Texans back to the playoffs. And that's where they want to be. And they upgrade the roster around them. What does that say, though? You know, we'll talk about CJ Stroud in a second, but what does that say about a Trevor Lawrence, about a Kirk Cousins, who we talked about in the NFC, where people have him, bolstering this team to Super Bowl contention? Well, he's not a top 10 quarterback. So again, what do you think of a Kirk Cousins? So I think that's a bigger storyline. But CJ Stroud, man, let me ask you, what's his ceiling this very year, 2024? How high can CJ Stroud get on this list for you?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say, looking at my entire list here, he definitely could move up to 6. He could move up to 6 right now. Honestly, I could make an argument for it. Number 5, he definitely could. I don't think he will, but he could. Number 4, I think he could, man. I'm not as high on this guy as I once was, in Joe Burrow, that is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say anywhere from 4 to 8, I could see him finishing this season.
Right.
Now,
And by the way, my bad. I
get
meant to
into
preface.
the top 3. I mean, what's a reality?
Yeah.
Like, what's the real ceiling? I mean,
What I
2.
want to preface with is I do agree with you. I think he can reach anywhere but number 1. Like I don't
Yeah,
think he's
yeah.
going to have a better
That's
year than
for
number
everyone,
1.
I
We
would
don't
say.
have it out there. But what I mean by this is in 2024, right? Like we're not saying if CJ Stroud goes out, balls out, the Texans run away with the division, win 2 playoff games, get to the AFC Championship, whatever. We're not saying that makes CJ Stroud the second best quarterback already, but this year he could be the second best quarterback. This year he could get himself up in the argument to where next year he starts at 4 or 5. No one's saying because he has a successful year, he's now, better than Joe Burrow and 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. But I think he can have a better year than all of those guys.
Yeah. 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in his rookie season.
Right.
Yeah,
I would expect those touchdown numbers to go up, and if he can keep the turnovers down in that low single digits, mid single digits, 27, 28 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, somewhere around there. Yeah, and I think that's the recipe for him, man.
He was banged up a bit last year as well, right? Only played 15 games.
So. Yeah,
a couple guys that got some starts mixed in there. So yeah, I think they made themselves more physical, which I think was a big key for their success as a team going forward, specifically on that defensive side of things. But adding a Joe Mixon, a guy that played in that tough AFC division with Cincy, Baltimore, Cleveland, that smash mouth division, I think he's going to bring some physicality to the offensive side of things as well. Yeah, it's going to be a fun year for CJ Stroud, but I do think that it's a great question you asked. Like, what is his ceiling? Because if things go well for him, top 5 easily this year.
Yeah, no, I agree, bro. I do think he's just that talented as well. Moving on, slide this over to our top 10 running backs, filling out the charts, man, within these first 4 divisions. We're only 50% of the way done with our divisional breakdowns, and we only each have 3 spots left. And it does make it tough when you're trying to fill in now. You don't want to leave anyone out because you can't go back and re-add. That's what we're doing with these lists. So we might get to a division. First thing that caught my eye when I was about to pull this up was, when we get to the West, is Kyren Williams not top 10? Is Kyren Williams not better than a Travis Etienne or a Josh Jacobs, whatever at this point? But it is difficult. But looking at these, the divisions we're just adding from right now, man, we both have Travis Etienne coming in at number 10. I think he's in that ballpark. I think like the Kyren Williams, esque type of back is where Travis Etienne falls into play. Have him at number 10. I have Jonathan Taylor at number 9. You have him up at number 6. I don't fault you for that at all. I mean, dude, a year and a half ago, Jonathan Taylor was arguably the best running back in the National Football League. So just because of issues, just like with a guy like Nick Chubb, just because you get beat up, just because you're injured, doesn't, mean anything just a year later. But he's got to earn it ahead of some of these other guys that I have on my list. And then obviously the young guy, Bijan Robinson, you have coming in at number 2. I have coming in at number 3 this year. Give the man the rock, okay? Yeah. Feed Bijan Robinson, for God's sake, man.
Yeah, man. I'm throwing Bijan. He's kind of in that same bucket with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe even just obviously on a little bit higher scale. I think his volume should go up significantly this year. That's why I do have him at number 2 coming into this season. I do think not the highest from Kirk Cousins, but having a competent quarterback back there makes your life 100 times easier as a running back when you're able to have the threat of actually throwing the ball down the field. That's going to make his life easier. He's going to be able to be more effective in the passing game as well with a competent quarterback. And I think the biggest thing for Bijan, man, is the versatility to get him up there to that number 2. His impact in the receiving and the rushing attack should lead the Falcons to a division win, right? Like that's what we're looking at here with the Atlanta Falcons and their success. I think he is their best offensive player. So love Bijan Robinson this year. You mentioned Travis Etienne at number 10. He's an interesting case because I think he could be lower. I think he also could be higher because he's another guy that's very versatile. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. And he can rush. I think for them, man, an interesting thought or idea, I guess, for the Jags would be maybe focusing your offense a little bit more around Travis Etienne and a little bit less around Trevor Lawrence. Maybe go with a little bit more of a rushing attack, right? And try to bring that physicality to match the defense. Just an idea. If they can get Travis Etienne involved like that.
Throw Etienne, but it's also for the fact that you just don't have the weapons on the outside to throw the ball 30 or 45 times a game.
Yeah, Why not
So
use this guy
who's
like
your
a
best weapon?
CMC if you
Right,
can? He's not
right. To
CMC.
your point, right?
Use him
Bijan
to a
Robinson.
similar point though.
Bijan has more competition within his offense, but Bijan's still the best player on that offense, right?
Yeah,
I don't think it's close when it comes to Travis Etienne and the Jags. Like
that's
Christian
fair.
Kirk is not a better wide receiver. It's not even close than Travis Etienne is as a running back. You
Yeah,
know, again, who are Gabe Davis? No,
yeah, exactly.
no.
Yeah.
So
I agree, man. And then Jonathan Taylor, I thought you hit the nail on the head, man. It's hard to measure where he really is. I
yeah,
guess him, Chubb, Jacobs on here out of respect.
yeah,
Hard to place them amongst these guys when they just were banged up last year, whatever the case may be, coming out of some of their less productive seasons in their careers. But Jonathan Taylor, the ceiling, having Anthony Richardson, I think it opens up lanes a little
yeah.
bit more for him. I think he could have a pretty good year as far as bouncing back. So
No,
we'll see.
I agree, man. I agree. Moving on to our top 10 wide receiver list, a little more scarce here, man. Tells you
Yeah.
where some of this talent might be coming from. Obviously had a couple guys last week. Actually, I believe the only wide receiver added, well, there's two coming from my
Two.
side
Yeah.
of things. Again, might be a little bit more of a respecting, as you just mentioned, with the running backs, but I do think people just easily forget about these two guys right here that I have at 9 and 10. Mike Evans coming in at number 9. It really doesn't matter who's playing quarterback for him. It can be
Yeah.
the GOAT. It can be Baker Mayfield. It can be Ryan Fitzpatrick. It can be you or me. It doesn't really matter. Mike Evans is going to get 1,000+ yards. Mike Evans is going to have 7, 8, maybe double-digit touchdowns. And Mike Evans is just overall one of the better offensive football players that this league has to offer.
Yeah.
I always go back, like AJ Brown's a physical freak, physical specimen. There's just guys, right? But Mike
Yeah.
Evans, if you were to just build a wide receiver from scratch, if you were just to draw one, if your prototype, Mike Evans is just the prototype. He is who you would want. The hands, the feet work, the size, the athleticism, everything Mike Evans brings to the table. So I have him at 9. And Stephon Diggs, I still have at number 10. I mean, I think there actually are conversations with people on whether or not he's even the best receiver on his team. Is it Nico Collins already? I'm not going to do that. Say like we just talked about with respect to running backs, like a guy like Kyron Williams had a hell of a year last year. Could definitely be top 10. But am I going to look at 1 year of Kyron Williams plus an injury to Nick Chubb and tell you
Yeah.
that Kyron Williams has surpassed Nick Chubb as a running back or has surpassed Jonathan Taylor as a running back? No, I don't believe that. Just like I don't believe Nico Collins, after one great year and one lesser year for Stephon Diggs, has passed Stephon Diggs, nor have a lot of other wide receivers. Still possibly the best route runner in football. Still has great hands, still has great feet. Everything about Stephon Diggs, just named team captain this morning by his peers in Houston. And I do think Stephon Diggs has I don't want to say resurgence because I don't think his stats are going to blow you off the paper, because they have to spread the ball around. They're going to spread the ball around in
Yeah.
Houston, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
think Stephon Diggs is going to have 100+ receptions for 1,450 and 8 touchdowns. But I do think he's going to have one hell of a year, and I do think he's still a top 10 receiver.
Yeah, no, I can't necessarily argue with that. I guess with some of these other guys that I threw on here instead of like Stephon Diggs, the Mike Evans is the one that I think about a little bit more harshly just because he does produce no matter what, man. It doesn't matter who his quarterback is. He gave Baker Mayfield some of his best numbers ever. I guess maybe the thought process there was maybe Baker Mayfield comes back down to earth, doesn't get him the ball as much this year, but we'll see. That's a story to be told.
Even Diggs last year, man, 107 catches, about 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, still putting up great numbers. Stephon Diggs. I think, maybe it's his attitude that has, people a little bit more sour on him. I know that's definitely what it is for me. Just kind of the disruption that you caused to the point where why is Buffalo not keeping this guy as their like they didn't replace him with anything that would make you think, this was a reason to get rid of Stephon Diggs.
You know what,
so
man?
That's kind of the weird thing for me with Josh Allen. Like that seemed like a good situation up there, but
and again, you're going to run your mouth.
Weird.
Your brother's going to be tweeting or retweeting things about your quarterback and sharing things throughout a season. And then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I know I have him a top 10. I'm kind of dissing him here. Didn't he drop a ball in the playoffs last year that would have put them all the way down the field late in the game? So, I mean, you're going to run your mouth, man. when number 17, who you have some issues with, does put a ball right in your basket, how about you go and catch it? But I do think, man, looking at both sides of it, when it comes to Diggs and Allen, it's going to be a huge year storyline wise. Like you said, and the funny thing is, I don't think that dynamic has gotten really any media attention from the offseason. Like, when it was going on, when he was still in Buffalo, it was being cycled throughout the, over and over and over again. And then he gets traded and it's talked about. But now people have kind of forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And it always takes me back to like the Brady Belichick arguments. Like, who was it? Who is it? Right. And now you have a Josh Allen basically alone in Buffalo. If Josh Allen goes out and throws for 4,000 yards and 30 plus touchdowns again and wins a division or gets to the playoffs, who was it? You know what I mean? Or if he struggles, but Stephon Diggs goes and plays with a guy they consider a real better QB or whatever, and he balls out, you look at it from that side. So it's going to be an interesting storyline to keep track of there. A little bit of drama when it comes to former teammates out in the AFC, man. But
there is one guy. There's one guy. You don't have to go back or anything like that. There is one guy I'm wondering as we go through these divisions. If you left him off of that list, it's very similar to Mike Evans, to Stephon Diggs in a sense, but I'm interested to see, just because I know it's a guy that you have loved in the past. But we'll get on that in a later show. We got 2 more shows the rest of this week to break down those other sets of divisions.
Hold on, I won't. We won't talk about it now, but hold on. Just give me a second to ponder on who this could be. It's a receiver you're talking about.
Yeah, it is a receiver, man. It is a receiver. I don't want to bring it up now just because it is going to be a major talking point when we get to that division, but it is something interesting. It's actually 2 receivers on that team. So it's going to be an interesting conversation nonetheless. I'll give you a nod off the air. I'll give you a nod off the air of who it is.
All right, I'm so intrigued to see who this is, man. I'm trying to
maybe you have him higher. Maybe I just can't see you having him possibly higher, but maybe he is.
I'm trying to go through the divisions we haven't done in my head real quick and think about who the hell this could possibly be.
It's just the Wests and the Easts.
Yeah. I got you.
Left.
All right, well, I'll give you. Yeah, we'll talk about it off air. In a couple minutes here, man. But adding to our tight ends, I only added one this week, and that is Mr. Kyle Pitts coming in at number 8. You have him at 9. You have Evan Ingram sliding in at number 8 here. Kyle Pitts, I mean, it's put up or shut up time, brother. And it's another, like, if you are the Atlanta Falcons, right, that we just talked about them today. We talked about Kirk Cousins. We talked about it all, man. You have spent 2 single-digit draft picks over the last 2 years on positions that nobody really drafts at. Actually, is Kyle Pitts heading into year 3 now? Whatever it is, you spent a top 5 draft pick on Kyle Pitts and a top 10 draft pick 2 years ago on Bijan Robinson, a running back and a tight end. Teams don't do that, bro. They just simply don't do it.
The reason why.
He has not lived up to it. Now, is it because of him or is it because of the quarterback play, the play calling, the system that he's in? They go out, they get a guy in Kirk Cousins who can throw for over 4,300 yards and 30 plus touchdowns. They add around them. This is it, man. The reason Kyle Pitts is on this list, A, the back end of tight ends in this league is a little low for me talent-wise, and B, just purely off of hypothetical talent. Off of the size, off of the speed, off of the hands, off of the fact that he's a tight end that could really be a wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
So he is here because of what he's thought to be.
Yeah.
It has to show up this year. Like, I don't care that it's year 1 with Kirk Cousins. I do not care, man. I don't care if Bijan's getting the ball 30 times a game. If Kyle Pitts does not show up this year and show, because here's the thing, Scotty, let me throw this out there as well. Kyle Pitts can't just stay at number 8. In order for Kyle Pitts to stay top 10 for me next year, Kyle Pitts needs to show me that he's top 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Maybe even slightly higher. Because that's what the thought is. That's what the vision of Kyle Pitts is.
Yeah.
It's not okay that he's just a top 10, a top 9 tight end in this league. He has to perform and get ahead of a TJ Hawkinson and be talked about with a Sam Laporta, with a George Kittle, with a Trey McBride this year.
It's where he belongs. Yeah, I shouldn't say that's where he belongs. It's not where he belongs. It's where in our mind, if he performed where he's supposed to, that's where he belongs. And to your point, yeah, this is a make it or break it season because you do finally have a competent quarterback back there, a guy that can get you the ball. And you can argue between Drake London and Kyle Pitts, like who is the number one receiver there? Like who is the more talented player at their position there when it comes to the passing and receiving game? There's an argument for Kyle Pitts to be made there, but you can also argue that Drake London's outperformed him so far. So there's arguments coming from all over the place there. Nonetheless, Kyle Pitts, we know what kind of talent that he came into the league with, what they were saying about him. And to your point, in order to get where he's been renowned, the talent, right, that he's been renowned to have, he needs to eclipse like an 1,000-yard season. Like that would be successful in my eyes. Like if Evan Ingram can go out and get you 900 receiving yards in a season last year, which is why he's where he is on my list, then Kyle Pitts should be able to go out and get you in 1,000-yard season, a 5 to 8 touchdowns in a year, right? And that's what we're looking for with him. And that's going to be a big narrative to follow with the Atlanta Falcons, man. All the hype that's coming with them, that's the hype that comes with Kyle Pitts and Drake London and the Bijan Robinsons, these first-round draft picks at skill positions. So it'll be interesting to see how this season plays out, man. But fun so far. That's what I'll say.
Yes, sir. We are just a short 2 days away from getting ready to go live with everybody here on the Turf Talk channel and give our thoughts on the opener in Arrowhead, the defending back-to-back Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and the two-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. The rematch of the AFC Championship last year opens up this season. We're going to be talking about it. And we're going to be giving our Super Bowl predictions, our playoff predictions, our player award predictions. It's going to be a fun kickoff show, man. So, guys, like we said before, if you're watching right now, if you're not subscribed, make sure to tap in. Make sure to subscribe. When we do go live, it is really the only spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up. Twitter, Facebook. We can't see your comments through StreamYard, whatever their issues still are. So, subscribe to the channel, to all the channels. And we'll be talking to you guys again tomorrow on Wednesday, breaking down 2 more of our divisions here and adding to our player rankings. Peace out.
Peace, everybody.